Diplomatic Channel this week takes a closer look at U.S. President Donald Trump's trade tariffs on America's closest allies. On Wednesday, the Trump administration announced it would be imposing tariffs on steel and aluminum from Europe, Mexico and Canada, and a move that has drawn harsh criticism from these countries and given fodder for more criticism for the U.S. president. We'll take a look at the tariffs and what it could mean for America's allies. Plus, a report by international charity Save the Children that at least 1.2 billion minors around the world are at risk from conflict, poverty or gender discrimination. We'll be talking to Advocacy Director for the charity in Nigeria, Mr. Emmanuel Mamo. Welcome to the program. I am Amarachi Ubani. Let's begin in the United States. On Thursday, President Donald Trump announced a 25% sweeping tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports from Canada, Mexico and the European Union. Observers said the move would have an immediate impact on global trade in steel and aluminum, particularly between the United States and Canada, America's largest source of imported steel, especially since the U.S. president almost got into a trade war with China. And these allies have reacted and they predict a grim future for the relations with the United States.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross on Thursday said the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from the European Union, Canada and Mexico will take effect from Friday. President Donald Trump decided not to extend the temporary steel and aluminum tariff exemptions for these key trading partners. Ross said the U.S. looks forward to continued negotiations with Canada and Mexico on one hand, and with the European Commission on the other hand, as there are other issues that need to get resolved. Back in March, Trump announced plans to impose 25% tariff on imported steel and 10% on aluminium, while delaying implementation for some trading partners to offer concessions to avoid the tariffs. The White House had said in April that the steel and aluminium tariff exemptions for EU member countries, Canada and Mexico, would be extended until June the 1st, in order to give a final 30 days for them to reach agreements over trade negotiations. But those negotiations have so far failed to produce a deal.
Hold on a second.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was the first to respond to President Trump's announcement.
The American administration has made a decision today that we deplore and obviously is going to lead to retaliatory measures, as it must, but we regret that. We would much rather move together in partnership, understanding that no two countries have economies as interwoven and mutually beneficial as Canada and the United States.
He promised Canada will impose retaliatory tariffs on over 16 billion Canadian dollars worth of U.S. exports and would challenge the U.S. steel and aluminium tariffs under the North American Free Trade Agreement and the World Trade Organization. He cancelled a meeting with President Trump during the week over a clause proposed by Vice President Mike Pence.
The United States said as a precondition to us meeting and negotiating, we would have to accept a sunset clause. I said we could not accept a sunset clause in NAFTA as a precondition to meeting or as any sort of condition, but that if they were willing to take that off the precondition list, I would be happy to come down. But that was not something that could ever be acceptable to Canada, or I'm fairly certain to Mexico, in the negotiation of a North American Free Trade Agreement.
Mexico retaliated almost immediately. The Mexican measures targeted pork legs, apples, grapes and cheeses, as well as steel products from U.S. heartland states that supported Trump in the 2016 election. Economy Minister Ildefonso Guajardo estimates the U.S. tariffs would affect $4 billion in trade between the two countries.
Unilaterales e injustificadas.
And in Europe, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker promised the EU will impose countermeasures.
The European Union cannot react to that without any kind of reaction, so we'll immediately introduce a settlement dispute on the WTO level, and will announce in the next coming hours counterbalancing measures. What they can do, we are able to do exactly the same. It's totally unacceptable that a country is imposing unilateral measures when it comes to world trade.
Countries in the European Union voiced their concerns and retaliation for the tariffs. France's junior trade minister, Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, called the tariffs unjustified and promised proportionate and calibrated response. Germany said the U.S. decision was damaging, but that Berlin would work hard to preserve transatlantic ties. Foreign Minister Heiko Maas called the tariff decision unlawful. Meanwhile, on Friday, the EU Trade Commissioner, Cecilia Malmström, said the door to trade negotiations with the United States is closed for the moment. The Swedish Commissioner said the EU executive was finalizing a list of retaliatory measures which should be announced by the end of the month after consultation with the 28 EU member states.
We have started the preparation for the so-called rebalancing measures. We will do that on a proportionate and measured way in a couple of weeks. The deadline for this is the 20th of June, as announced in the official journal. So we have started the preparation. We will, of course, consult with member states in the coming days.
Last year, the United States incurred a trade deficit of more than $150 billion with the EU, its #1 trading partner, which Trump labeled unacceptable. Although most economists say the trade flows are determined by broader economic forces such as national savings rates, Trump blames European tariffs for the imbalance.